it to? And what did this world do to you? What will it take to get you through? And how long has this had a hold on you?
Hello, good day. Welcome to another edition of Addicted2 Get Connected. It's my pleasure to bring my friend John onto the show here today. So welcome.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
So I guess what we've had a little bit of a conversation with, let's first just kind of back up a little bit and maybe you can just tell everyone how much time you've got in. And
Sure. My sobriety date, September 14th, 2011, so a little coming up on 14 years,
14 years
of sobriety. And I'm sure you've heard it before. I just got to that stage in my disease where I'd run out of choices. And that admission to alcoholism was the seed of me starting on this road of happy destiny. So here I am 14 years later and living a really satisfying life at this, at the age I'm at. I was sort of a late bloomer. I'm 76. I'll be 77 in November.
well, I mean, late bloomer or not, I mean, the thing is, it's a good thing you made it that long without something catastrophic happening. That's the first thing.
Well, true. There were some physical aspects to it. I suffered a seizure at work, which is what led me into the program. But the medical people, so grateful for them, the medical people that looked after me in the early days, they were starting to see signs of the effect of alcohol on me physically. So the timing couldn't have been better. I don't know whether I would have been here physically had I continued down that road. So hats off to the medical profession that helped me through this in the early days.
And, the one thing that always struck me, I was always fascinated and always admired, was the fact that you seemed to be able to get the serenity piece so quickly. And I struggled on that, I would say openly, at least 10 years. How do you think you were able to really let go of the past and be able to accept so quickly?
Really good question. In my particular story, the first 3 years of my sobriety were difficult because I wanted to get back into my marriage. That, for this alcoholic, that was my goal. If I can show my wife that I'm in this program and that I'm getting better day after day, maybe I can get back into this marriage. And making the statement that my program was held back in those early days really isn't a negative statement, because once I realized that I wasn't on a timeout, that this marriage was over, when I accepted that and had the big, sigh of this is life, this is my reality, a calmness came over me that I no longer had this specter of will I get in, will I not? And all I had to concentrate on was the next hour, the next 24 hours. And that brought absolute peace to my soul. And that's continued to this day. Like everybody else, I have my moments, but the realization that I had to go on this journey on my own and try and figure out life on my own brought serenity to me, if that makes sense. At 65 years old, I had to learn how to live by, I'd never lived by myself. I'd gone from my mother's home to my first wife's home to my second wife's home. And here I was trying to survive in this world by myself. And that flicker of hope that I might get back into my marriage was gone. So I had to look in the mirror and say, you better get with it. Better get to know this guy that you're looking at in the mirror. And a real peace came over me that knock on wood, hasn't left me to this day.
Well, good on you. So my only question would be, and we don't have to get into too much of the backstory of that. Your marriage is one thing, but I know that you did have some background when you grew up with an alcoholic family. So you didn't carry any of that over into adulthood, any resentments, any bitterness. You were just able to let that go?
Another really good question. The thing, as I'll put it, that I brought from my childhood was I became a really good liar. My mother was an alcoholic for most of her life, and a secrecy develops in the household of an alcoholic. To the world, you want to put on this Superman cloak that everything's great. We're a good Roman Catholic family. Everything's good. Mom and dad are good. And there was this darkness that only we as children knew about. And so you started getting really good at telling lies about what was happening in your private life. And what I brought to my disease was I became a really good liar. And because of that, my disease was exasperated because when you lie, there's a huge element of fear because you've built a spider web and you better have built that spider web correctly, or the fear is that the truth is going to come out. And it's a horrible state to be in. And that particular aspect of my inner life was the biggest struggle that I had. In addition to the wantingness of getting back into my marriage, it was I got to learn to stop building webs and tell it like it is and deal with the consequences, whether negative or positive. And that was hard for me. That was a real learning experience for me.
I've found, and we're going to explore it in later shows, there seems to be a direct correlation between people that may or may not have been diagnosed with ADHD, and I can see some common traits amongst a lot of us in that regard. But the other thing is not only the fear aspect, but there's always an underlying anxiety. And when you're talking about the lie and just the way we live our lives, there's always that fear and that there's always that je ne sais quoi, but we're waiting for that other shoe to drop, whether it be, an argument or the fear that somebody's going to find out the truth of the facade or the fear that we don't measure up. I mean, we've got 1,000 fears to be afraid of. So, but just getting back to the original part, I always took my hat off to you because even if you faced all of that in your first 3 years, there's a lot of people that I've talked to, even on the program here, that don't get that serenity piece for 20 or 25 years, and it eventually drives them back out. So, I'm just always amazed that you could accept so easily and just go with the flow.
Maybe spiffballing here, but it could be my age. My age could be a factor. In other words, I got these snippets of joy as I became sober. I spent many nights in the rec room of my sponsor, and I would come out of his home thinking I could fly after we would have these deep sessions together as we went through the big book. And it wasn't a sense of I'm on a clock or you never know, it's 65, you never know when you're going to go. But there is that thought in my mind that I have a few lesser years than, among others, my host. and I'm going to really enjoy this. And the only way that I can jump into the deep end of the pool is to buy into this idea that who knows what's coming around the next corner. Let's just take baby steps, see what's going to happen, see where it's going to take us. And what's the sense of biting my nails and getting worried about what's going to happen? Just be joyful that I'm here.
I hear you, because I've often thought about that myself, because I'm 59 now. And it's not that I really dwell on it, but I've been sober for 12 years. But also, there's now a maturity. And sometimes when I get in certain situations, I say to myself, do you really want to die on that hill? And I was thinking about it earlier in the week, and some different conversations where, the younger you would say, well, I ran something by my dad. Your friends would say, well, what did he say? And I'd say, nothing. And now I'm at that age where you say nothing, but I get it, because you stop and think, is it even really worth the response? Or, we don't need to weigh in on everything. We don't need to be right on every issue. We just a lot of the times we make noises just getting up out of bed now. So, do you really want to waste your effort on it? And just before the show, you and I were talking, and you were saying that you're having a bit of a difficulty because you kind of want to control the outcomes of your kids, or at least tell them your wisdom and what maybe to do or not to do. And now you're kind of grappling with that, as opposed to the other side of the addiction where we're not present, disconnected, discontented, and we don't have anything to say other than mumbling, grumbling, bitching, or whatnot. So I just wanted you to kind of weigh in on that, and how are your children, responding to that?
It's so interesting that you would bring that up. I wanted to give two examples of where I was versus and how I've come along. I've experienced a daughter coming out of her bedroom and witnessing me taking a slug out of a Mickey in the rec room in my family home, and just looking at me and turning around and going back into her bedroom. I've had another experience with a daughter that was helping us set the table for a family dinner, and she moved my briefcase, and I had left the zipper open on the briefcase, and she pulled out a bottle of vodka and just looked at me and shook her head and put the bottle back in the briefcase. So there was that absolute emptiness and shame, and the sense of this is futile. I have no relationship with these children who have given up on me. To fast forward 14 years later, I find that when I'm dealing with the friends that I've come to know on my journey, so the friends that I've come to know in the last 14 years, that I think I'm a pretty good listener. I'm an active listener. And I really try to offer up shared experiences rather than giving advice. Whenever I'm in a conversation with a brother or a sister, for instance, in the program, it's not my role to give advice. It's my role to listen. And if there's something that in my experience that I think might help, I'll share that. When you take that algebra to the relationship of a father and children, it's become a little more difficult for me. And I'll give you an example. I have a daughter who is looking for a career change. And was really going through a rough time dealing with anxiety, took some time off work with stress leave, and you're there in the background and you run out of shared experiences, and you start going down the path of what advice can I give her? I've been through this when I was her age. What can I do? Looking for a job is like having a job. All those things that we throw out. And I've got to step back and say to myself, I love my daughter, but in a certain sense, this isn't any of my business. She's got to find her way. If I'm called upon to discuss what's going on, that's the role that I play. And it's really hard. It's really hard to be a father and a recovering alcoholic at the same time. I don't know whether there's any other parents out there that feel that, but that has been, and of course, at my age, all of my children are adults. They have all these pressures of parenthood and owning homes and dealing with mortgages. And yet they're still your children. They still come back to you, and they have problems, and they're reaching out to you. And your first go-to is, I can solve this for them. I'm 76 years old. I've had all this shit in my life. I'm going to solve this for them. And I can't do that. I can't do that for me, and I can't do that for them. I can't do that for my own peace of mind, my own serenity. And so, as you say, the idea of me being a serene person becomes a little more challenging with my kids. So that's where I'm at this stage in my life. And I know they'll continue to have their challenges. But on the positive side, and we talked about this, isn't it a miracle that I'm here even to be listening to this, to be present for them, to trust the guy who had the bottle of vodka in the briefcase, to fast forward to today when they can come to me and, with open hearts, they can say, I'm suffering, Dad. I don't know what to do. And I hate my job, or the kids are driving me crazy, or the in-laws are driving me nuts. And for them to trust me enough to even bring those problems to me, regardless of whether, I don't have any solutions. Even if there's an expectation from them that I can offer up a solution, it's just being there for that. That just gives me joy. I can put my head down at night, say to myself, I didn't solve a thing for those kids today, but at least they came to me, and we shared that moment together.
But, it doesn't matter how old you are, you're always a father. You're always a father for as long as you're on this side of the ground and they are. And I can relate to it because it doesn't matter what the situation is. You've been on the earth longer than they have. So as a father, you want to share that and you want to say your piece, however you relate to it. And then they in turn sort of want to hear it, but the famous, I know, Dad, I know. They come to you, but they don't want you to solve it, but they want you to be a sounding board and a comfort. I'm with you. I don't know, that's the thing. I don't know if we understand sober or drunk, where the line is on how much we share or how much support we give. But I know sober, it's got to be a lot more than the drunken stupidity that we would have spewed before. But the fine line between too much or not enough has yet to be determined,
I hear you. What goes through my mind, especially with my daughters, is I get this picture of this little girl on a bicycle with training wheels. And no matter what their problems are, I have daughters in their 50s and their 40s. They're always going to be, in some ways 7 years old. And the day comes when those training wheels come off and you're free, you know how to ride the bike. and you one side of your brain goes to that place where, you fell off the bike. I got to fix this. And yet that's not what they're asking for. They're not asking you to, pick me up, Dad, and put me back on the bike. They're just saying, I got some shit going on in my life. And what do you think?
And I certainly don't mean to sound sexist at all, but dealing with girls and boys are two different kettle of fish. They just are. Women tend to be a lot more emotional. And, as guys, like even when guys talk about things, it's more clearly defined, I would say. Whereas with the daughters, it's hard to describe, but it is more of an emotional piece, if that makes any sense. With the guys, you're like, yeah, this is a score, doesn't look good, boom, yeah, okay, well, better try next game. Whereas a girl is like, is there a chance that, we might, well, yeah, if we make a different few plays, it just seems to be more of an intricate relationship. And I don't know if there's too many guys that feel that they ever get it right with either son or daughter.
Yeah, the grateful 2 sons and 3 daughters. And it's interesting when you're dealing with sons. For me, it's a vulnerability issue. So I'll say to myself, sure, we can talk about last night's hockey game if that's what you want to talk about, or do you want to go a little bit deeper? And it sometimes your boys have to get to that vulnerable stage where they go, well, this is what's really going on. I don't really want to talk about last night's hockey game. Whereas with my daughters, you're pretty much in the deep end of the pool right off the start. I've found over the years that I think almost like a blanket statement that a woman doesn't fear her vulnerability, whereas a man does. Just as a general comment, I don't mean to paint a brush for guys in the world, but that's been my experience.
It's true.
And I feel that with my sons. So it's a different approach, but still for this alcoholic, it's always, I can fix this. and you can't. I hope that doesn't come across as a negative statement. You can love them and you can support them and share, you share some experiences. You don't want to share maybe all of your experiences, because as you and I have come to know, sometimes you don't want to take the risk that you're going to hurt a person by sharing something that they don't know about in your life. And that's more of an issue I feel with my children, that there might be some things that, while I think it might be appropriate to talk about an issue with them, sometimes I'll hold back and say, no, that would hurt them to know that. And that's okay in my court. That's okay. I can rest easy with that. But again, it's the I want to love them, but I can't fix this for them.
When you were talking earlier and you were saying there was 2 situations when your daughters had kind of caught on to your addiction, was that situational, or were the boys not around, or were the daughters paying more attention to it and the guys were kind of ignoring it? I was just kind of fascinated that you've got 3 daughters, but the 2 instances you were referring to were with the daughters. You didn't mention any situation that happened with your sons.
Really good, another good observation. It's interesting, my 2 sons have shared with me in their adult lives that they wanted what I have. When they've seen me change in the last 14 years. And the only comment that they'll ever make is they won't talk about the past. I really can't think of a situation like I did with my 2 daughters where there was an issue during my drinking days, but it's their comment that they saw it in my eyes and they wanted to have that. And that's very comforting to me. But again, maybe the role playing or the male feeling that I can't shed a tear, I can't be vulnerable to this. Dad's a drunk and so be it, and I'm not going to get involved. I can't speak for that. I'm guessing that's maybe what their thought process might have been, but they have certainly been all in since I've recovered. And again, it's the joy of being present. I get phone calls from my two sons. They both live out of town, and it's interesting. I'll ask the question, are we talking son and dad, or are we talking brothers? And they go, no, this is brother to brother. Yeah. And I'll go, okay, good. I hear you. And we'll have a totally different conversation than you would if it's a son to father question, if that makes any sense. But that's how it works for me.
Well, it does. One's more of a camaraderie, and then the other one is more of a defined. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, it's more of a defined, I kind of need the experience side from my dad, where the brother to brother is, you're still looking for that, but it's more of a peer and a more of a shared thing, but not necessarily do they want you to weigh in, right?
Yeah. And again, I go back to my statement about my daughters. They trust me. And it almost makes me cry from where I was to where I am now, to have your 5 children just, all the way from, can you look after the baby while I go to the grocery store, or can you pick up my daughter or son at school, to, hey, I want to share something with you, and what's said in the road stays on the road. That brings me a lot of calm and a lot of serenity.
Well, it means you've come a long way.
Yeah, I've come a long way, and it's so worth it. So worth it to have that inside-out experience with your children, and I can't even describe what a great feeling that is.
Well, again, another common theme that I found over doing these shows comes back to something that kind of conflicts with an old myth, and the old myth is the piece that you have to do it for yourself, and you do, when I'm referring to becoming sober. But so often now I'm hearing the motivating factor is the family piece, the spouse, or could be a parent, someone or something that you admire, and you don't want to feel that like you're letting them down. And there is no replacement for the love of children. And when you really come to the realization of the hurt that we've caused by not being present, even if they ask you to weigh in on something and they're like, well, man, that's the way it was in his day, but it's different now. Whatever the situation is, at least you're being there. And I mean, that's huge. Absolutely.
So it's an interesting time in my life. I live on my own, and I enjoy the fortress of solitude. I really enjoy the friends that I've come to know over these past 14 years. But still, there's still these challenges because we're not perfect. What's the saying? There is a God and it ain't me. And so just a fulfilling life. That's all I ask for, 24 hours at a time.
Well, you're rocking it. So we're out of time here for this one, but we're hoping you're going to come back next week. And there's a few more things that I want to bring up with you.
Great chatting with you.
Thanks a lot, John. So for everybody else, take care, and we hope that you like us and follow us on Spotify and share with your friends. Take care.